Okay, hello everyone, welcome to another episode. The title is When the Blade of the Intellect was Sheathed Through Simplicity. Usually we are encouraged to be incredibly intellectual in these modern times. But why should the sword or the blade of the intellect be sheathed? What is the value of intellectual effort, And I find that really depending on what you see in the causal position, if you feel it started from a mind, then matter came, or it started from matter, then a mind came. Your approach to how much you need to articulate the environment changes, Of course, our intelligence has to be directed. It's like this intelligence, whatever it may be, it is here to be used. Now, personally, in some moments of my life, I have intellectualized situations and missed out on kind of the sincere flow. And I've spoken about this before, but I will share the major idea I'm sharing here, is that emotional stability is more of a priority than intellectual precision. Why? You see, how many times has it been that reasonable approaches to the moment are shared, yet the actions and activities of human beings are not reasonable? If we didn't have emotions, if we couldn't suddenly change our minds, then I would say intellect all the way. But in the Sufi tradition, when it came to curiosity and wonder about the source of animate movement, to only intellectualize such a collective event and occurrence, the Sufis said it's like whipping a dead donkey to run faster, As if you have made something lifeless, then you are expecting to see life in it. Now, why emotional stability? Usually, regardless of what I've said so far about intellect, usually we tend to think that it's better to see what's in the room before we move. And you can say somebody who's moving emotionally is, in some sense, in another room behind their eyes. Emotions are not from now. There is something that I feel anytime a person becomes emotional, there is a sort of parallel selfhood. Various memories of self are trying to be the energy of the moment. As if like an angry person, where is their anger coming from? Where is their behavior, even their angry behavior, coming from? It's like from an inner event that is still alive to them, an event in the past that is still alive to the person. An example would be somebody stepped on your toes when you were younger, and now you're like, how dare the world step on my toes? Pa, pa, pa. So that anger, it's as if like, let's say you got pushed when you were young, you couldn't push back, okay? And years passed. Imagine 40 years passed. Somebody pushes you. You push them without a reason, without a justification. Emotions are a suggestion that time is multidimensional. We're responding to the moment through various experiences of self and time. In the art of war, there's a saying. They say, the true warrior defeats the opponent without moving his weapon or something. Usually, intellectual precision is kind of that. I would say the intellect is just a flashlight with more power. But intelligence is different. Intelligence, let's say the intellect is like the flashlight in the room. It's illuminating what's going on. It's looking at it accurately. But then the intelligence is what you do after what you've seen in the with the flashlight. What you do with what you see, and what you see are two different things. An example of intellectual precision would be as if a bunch of people are in a bunch of people are, let's say, I don't know, in a loose gathering. People are not taking the moment seriously, and then the intellectual precision, by taking the moment seriously, goes into a different wave. Do you know? I can tell you, anything you take seriously, it also takes you seriously. You know? I would say intellectual precision is trying to make sure the micro is in order, and then go into the macro. I would say if the person had a sort of emotional playfulness, it would, rather than be like, okay, imagine intellectual precision is a straight line. Now, emotional playfulness, let's say that is like a scribbly line. Okay? Now, if we had an outcome, if this world wasn't a blank page and there were dots that we had to connect in straight lines, then intellectual precision would be enough. But because it's, I would say, this blank page is creating void possibility, maybe in this life to be, what's the term? To be the scribbly line may be more fulfilling than just being a straight line to the outcome, you know? Because if we wanted to intellectualize reality, pretty much there's no meaning to anything. I will tell you, I have wondered about reason. Why is there a reason for reason? And it's like once you have reasoned something, it ends. It's stamped. Do you know? I think naturally being born into a world so big, makes all psyches feel inferior. And it is only in the involvement and the outcome, the type of karma that the person may feel something has changed. You know, I think somehow living in this life has to be like a Indiana Jones movie. And what it means is you have to be precise in certain moments, yet you have to improvise when that boulder is chasing you and you're running away. You know? I feel playfully the only the only outcome is left is we gotta be playful with our seriousness, and we gotta be serious with our playfulness. We gotta learn to I feel move both wings at the same time. In the path of yoga, they would say 50% is practical. It's based on practice. And then 50% is based on a sort of philosophical comprehension on why you're doing the practice. I would say this 50% practice, 50% philosophy is like the two wings of the mind simultaneously moving and causing flight. You know, in the chat section says, step out of the path of the boulder and let it pass. um, yeah, but they'll sell less movie tickets now. Eventually, I mean, that is the strategy, but I'm saying, like, the reason it's like you don't have time to go step by step, and automatically the person is pushed towards unknown movement, you know? That means, think of it this way. There is two parts, let's say, to life. There is a known part and an unknown part. Okay, the known part we are being serious with, accurate, intellectual precision, but the unknown part of life, that can't be, there are certain parts of it that can't be journeyed. It's not even designed to make sense. It's designed to, in some sense, just have the senses flow. You know, it's like, what is the meaning of a river? What is the meaning of life? Of what is the purpose of light? Do you know? So a balance between simplicity, complexity. These are these three main axes, I would say, are, if a person implements them, evokes these axes in any moment, you can comprehend anything. Pretty much how unknown and known a phenomena is, how simple and complex a phenomena is, and how efficient and inefficient a phenomena is. So in this experience of life, if a person wants to be a machine, you want to use your intellect as double check, kind of, let's say a double check earthquake. Or let's say you double check where it's like two earthquakes. Like an earthquake happened, you're like, oh, I got through it. Then another one happened, you're like, oh my god. Then you get through that. Then another one happens. Then you're like, what is this? Is the earth dancing? Like, the blade of the intellect can be heavy, but it must be carried. I feel what it is we should care about precision, intellectual precision, but we should just prioritize emotional stability first. In the sense that first we look at what happens, because information can be accurate. Like there could be, let's say, like a young child who's born in this world. Imagine somebody goes up to that child and says, like, there's no truth. You know, there is no point to living, all of it is an illusion. That young child would be like, buddy, I just got here. Let me look at the place first then. You know? I'm telling you, intellect is solidifying. And it's adding complexity, or accepting complexity in the realm. You can say the intellect is programmed to know what's going on, to figure out what's going on. You know, I find the way we have been able to exist as an intelligence is because intentionally we are keeping a part of ourselves unknown. That is the main reason. If the unknown was known, there would be no unknown, so there would be nothing to know. If there is nothing to know, you have completed living. The completion of living when there is nothing to know. When you have noticed everything is standing in the middle of nothing. We are like in the central point of a circle that exists, and the outside of it is non-existence. Humans will rise regardless of human lies and human eyes. Nature has a voice. It is louder than any human. Terence McKenna said there is another tenant in the room. The religions pointed to a God. The modern abstract realms of culture are pointing to interdimensionality. I feel that the theists of this world served us, and the atheists of this world have served us, and they have prepared the advanced communicators. They have prepared human beings who are no longer fighting for the mask of a changing world. That means there is a strength. I will tell you, this is like the roar of the soul through the lost mind. And I would tell you, it's like something I don't mention, but I'll mention it in this talk. Before a lot of these talks I give, there's a moment where sometimes I play a song, something, and I close my eyes. And I'm just sitting, listening to music, and then an inner event takes place. And what's interesting is that if you engage the inner event, it will become as if your physical existence is one instrument, and all the subjective contexts coming and going are another. And for a moment, the real and the unreal are in the perfect symphony. And then, if you can stay in that silence, then speak. It's as if your voice is born through the rhythm, so it cannot miss out on it. You see, we are rhythmic creatures. And it's so strange. It's so strange, this world of ours, that sometimes I feel suffering is because we're defining it. It's like pretty much human knowledge is like a river is passing by, or a waterfall, imagine, and somebody takes an empty glass cup, puts it under the waterfall. They're like, oh, look at my knowledge. And then they throw that water out, they've seen it, then they put the cup underneath the waterfall again. Oh my god, new knowledge. Then some other people come with a different cup and they put it under the water and they're like, yo man, we found secrets to other dimensions, other truths. You know, other entities, da-da-da-da-da. But it is all cups under a waterfall that cannot be measured. And that is the nature of energy. That we cannot fear what we cannot measure. How can you fear it? You know? It's like, how can we fear what we cannot conceive? I can't fear a failure that I can't imagine myself having. You know, let's say I don't play the instrument, the violin. It's like, I don't have a fear of failing to play the violin. It's like the concept's not even there. Do you see? you know? And think of how many of your fears and stuff are just concepts that are there, you know? Sometimes I feel what a person is afraid of gets offended. The person, you know, imagine like Beauty and the Beast or something, you know? That card, I remember seeing that as a kid. Like, you know, it's like the beast, what appears as a beast to the beast is not a beast. Any conscious being that has a sophisticated use of a language, it can't be a beast. That means if Tarzan learned to speak, instantly he becomes human. We don't care how much he behaves like an animal and he slams his plate to the table or something, you know? The moment you can speak and you can notice the visible other as a concept and subject, you're a member of human civilization. I wouldn't be surprised that we are in symbiosis with many types of beings we cannot see. You know what it is? It's like we're in a giant cosmic dark room. We have a candle. That candle is illuminating a little part of the dark room, and we're like, yo, we know what the universe is. We know what the cosmos is. There's so much unobservable phenomena, yet we're like, yo, we know. It's, I'm telling you, either the only way I can accept linguistic truth is everybody on the planet realizes they're an artist in the void. We are either artists in the void, or we were never art. That there was nothing ever new. We are the flashback of the unknown mind of existence. There is something about holding a weapon. For example, in medieval times, imagine you were part of the Roman army, you know, or imagine you were part of some military conquest back in the day with swords and shields or spears or whatever, you know. When a person holds a sword, there's a weight to it. There is a physical weight in your hand, and there is the weight of the consequence of this tool in your hand. If you were back in the day, you had to learn how to fight with a sword, you know? So a person would first hold the sword in the air and test the strength of first how long can they hold this? How long can they hold the weight of this, you know? And imagine you were this master swordsman back in the day, just your own swordsman in the forest, practicing styles and methods of sword combat, you know, that hadn't been, let us say, discovered, you know. You were just finding out, you were the explorer of the art form. And so let's say you had practiced, you had mastered attack, you had mastered every precision like a cobra to attack anything, to cut the branches of trees, to even cut the stem of a leaf. You know, you had that sort of intellectual precision, you know. Now, this swordsman who has mastered this, there is one thing he requires to train. You know, you have trained the offensive strategy. Now comes training the defensive strategy. You know, to learning from not necessarily having to do anything with your attack, because to attack takes energy. So if you can defend without energy, there is one step ahead. So let's say you master, let's say you get like, I don't know, you go poke a bear and you run away from it to expand your, to train your reflexes. That's not the best strategy, you know. But I'm saying, like, you would put yourself in a situation where you would require to defend. Now, what I have tended to see And I will say my eyes are very limited. I mean, maybe certain things, certain subjects I have looked very closely at, but when it comes to a lot of other dimensions, I am telling you, I am maybe in some rooms with a certain light, I am not a fool. But but in many ways, in many remember, I am a fool if I think I am not. Because the system is too big for declaration. On some level, everything, every voice, every sound in the void is rendered as art. Every human being that has spoken, every human being that has done anything, it has been art. Art in the void. So you mastered, let's go back to the metaphor. So you mastered fighting on the offense. Now you're mastering defense. And I would say, in an example of human communication, it's as if, I'll give you an example. For example, let's say you have religious grandparents, and you went to see these religious grandparents. Do you know? It's as if in that situation, you don't need to take out the sword of intellectual precision and change, 90-year-old person's certainty on themselves. Do you know? It's as if like their emotional stability of the human being's psyche takes a priority over than the intellectual precision. Because really, I'm telling you, because it is empty, everything technically can be authorized. We are saying freedom of speech. To have freedom of speech, we need to have freedom of sight, because we tend to speak about what we see. And to have freedom of sight means that you're allowed as a human being to live in any way on this planet as long as it doesn't impose and infringe on the potential of other unknown human minds. You know? So there is this freedom. There is this ultimate freedom that you even the person can even rationalize. They'll be like, okay, so I'm here for a little while. Why does it matter then? Why does it matter the ideological framework I choose? You know, I could choose to see the whole universe inside as a cup of iced tea with ice cubes in it. Do you know? I could choose to see whatever. I'm temporary. If I choose to just choose it based on my material sense of being, there's no responsibility. What responsibility could atoms in the void have? You know? It is the most irresponsible circumstance. You know, that means it is so easy to not become responsible over your subjective life. You can in an instant let it go. You can in an instant not care for the progress of yours. If 8 billion human beings realize that regardless of the intellectual ability or rationalization of the human being, there's emotions. That means if we were totally rational beings, salesmen would always sell their products. They would always sell it. Do you know what I mean? That means there's another filter. There is another level of emotions that whatever rational phenomena, still the emotion can make us move in a different way. And the issue with reason and rationality is that because they're based, reason and rationality, it's as if it's an attitude implemented. It's an approach towards content. So it's limited, your rationality and reasoning is limited to the information you have. So let's say you thought there was let's say you are a coach of some soccer team and you're facing another soccer team and you have a very, let's say, excellent, you have a good team and you're under the impression the other team's coach, that they don't have good players. Suddenly you see that team had acquired a new player last week, and it was like the greatest player. Do you know what I mean? So it's as if you were under an assumption with limited information, but as more information was added, all your reasoning seemed like imagination when there was more to the picture. So we are limited to what is there. It's like paint. You can paint as much of a rational picture, but it's limited to the paint. If there's new colors that we don't know about, it changes the whole possibility of how the picture could have been drawn. What I'm trying to say, folks, is that 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Each creature has a different inner realm. In the inner realms, their mind's life is different, but in front of our eyes, the body's life is in the same realm. So in front of our eyes, we're in the same place. Behind our eyes, this same place is unique and different to every person in accordance to how they have journeyed and experienced tunnel through their life so far. We have just been tunneling through experiences. It's like literally, it's like let's even say we numbered them. Do you know how much it would just go endless? It would be like, okay, experience 1 turned into experience 2, experience 2 turned into experience 3, experience 3 turned into experience 4. What the fuck? The psychologist is realizing that infinity is not gonna play easy. Infinity is the psychologist, it's the challenge of psychology. And it's the most, I would say, chaotic idea in education. That if there are additional dimensions that were there from the beginning, all was wrong. All was wrong. And when a person is afraid of their own simplicity, you suffer. I'm being honest, you suffer if you're afraid of your own simplicity. That means imagine, let's take a hypothetical situation. Let's say there's person A, in the park. And then person B, C alongside of the rest of the alphabet come. Or let's say first person B comes. Person B is like, person A, how dare you have the pride and think you're the first letter of the alphabet. You're nothing. Da 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 da. And person A gets upset, gets sad. And then suddenly person C comes, D comes, and all of the letters of the alphabet are like, shame, shame, shame. And person A does the unthinkable. Person A in front of the whole alphabet says okay, accepts the chaos throne. And the moment person A says, okay, all these things you're saying I am, then nothing can be said. Nothing can be said. Once you have accepted the simplest way your moment can be pushed, you are untouchable. You can see complex things. Even the most chaotic things can happen, but you have noticed the simple. And complexity is just layers of simplicity over one another. That means technically there is only one verb that we have all been doing, and it's self-replicating. We are the gene wearing jeans. Imagine you go to a, evolutionary biologist and you're like, what do you think about genes? And the evolutionary biologist is like, you kidding me? And it gives a huge lecture. Then the person's like, okay, what do you think about ripped jeans? And I honestly don't know if that term exists. Like, if ripped jeans are something. Let me see. Ripped jeans. Wrong search results. Ripped jeans is. Guys, it's a band, but it hasn't been used in actual. What's the term? Terminology. We should create the ripped gene. Oh man. Anyways, the intellect could karmically not be worth it. Sometimes pressuring it. I've been in moments personally in my life where I have allowed my inner realms to give structure to the outer realms. But sometimes it is not worth it. Sometimes it's like a bird is flying and it doesn't need human hands to help it fly. The bird is like has its own natural instruction. But like the ecosystem is giving instructions really. That means really if we're surviving, we're worshiping the environment because we have no other choice. We have to look at the environment. Our attention has to go to the environment in order to survive. So we can say we all have been our attention has been on the just on the outer realms to stay in it. Like I could sit here and entertain any sort of abstract or beyond human kind of context, but it's like the concept is still a biological creature on a planet. Sometimes I feel the mind is like a ring, and imagine you had like 10 rings on, or with each having a unique power, you know? So it's as if like this life is like one ring on the unknown witness, within the presence of the unknown witness. To realize you are an explorer, to realize you're a known self exploring an unknown world is the ultimatum of knowledge. The whole educational system is here. The purpose of it should be to be a mirror to remind the person that nobody knows. Nobody. And let me say that again. Nobody knows enough. And when nobody knows enough, that means new discoveries are waiting. That means just think of the moment Edison made the light bulb. Now imagine if Edison hadn't made the light bulb, we would have known since that time, we had all this time where we could have made the light bulb. It was a potential that was extracted out of the void. And so we have made the educational system try to make the future generations see the past when they are born to see the future. And there is something cool about being alive. that the unknown variables give at least some urge of a reason to stay here. That means if you truly entertain a materialistic perspective, you are a hallucination of electromagnetic activity. So we have to put an effort towards their material. And so we see in the past they had, but they did it unconsciously. I say this funny kind of metaphor. I don't know, to me it's funny. It's like there's this guy who's like a group of people back in the day, imagine, very like far back in the day. A group of people, they're walking by in the forest, they suddenly see a chair, like a wooden chair in the forest. And suddenly all these people who are there, they suddenly see the clouds part and a light shine upon this chair. And suddenly all of them, all those people, let's say there were 10 people there, these 10 people were like, oh, yo, you know, it's like this is a divine sign. Why would there be a chair in the middle of a forest? Do you know why would light shine on it exactly in that moment? And so they all start worshipping this chair one by one. They start worshipping this chair. There has been no greater sign of divinity. It's as if nature is telling them God is this chair. And so nobody dares to sit on this chair, you know. Even a leaf falls, they quickly slap the leaf mid-air from hitting the chair, and they start just worshipping this chair, this object. Now, some time passes, the person who actually forgot the chair there on a picnic or something comes back and sees like all these people worshipping this chair. And the person says, it takes the chair. And that moment, the 10 people are like, how dare you touch our God? How dare you? Do you know? And the guy's like, give me back my chair. What are you guys doing? And the guys are like, no, give back our God. And the guy takes his chair and gets out of there. He's like, what is this? You know, he's like, it's healthier for the world that way. You know? So I find the same thing is happening now, but with ideology. We are sitting on ideas like chairs. Or not sitting, we're worshipping these chairs. We're not even sitting on them, you know? And I don't know, you know, I don't get to hear a lot from the audience in regards to like sometimes the content I speak, but like I wonder how people's lives will be when they walk in the street and realize like lines of code, but as if they are subjects, everybody is walking as a subject. And if you don't fight, if you just be still, that means you let yourself be the fool in, I would say, social, subjective discourse. I'm just saying that physically we are what we are, but subjectively you are piloting your attention. So person A, when all the letters of the alphabet said all that, person A could dismiss it instantly. Or person A could accept it, and as I said, the moment person A accepts what all the other letters have said, they can't do anything. Sometimes when I give these talks, I feel like all that I'm doing is like pressing a key on the keyboard so repetitively to see in different moments of time how is it experienced, you know? And I'll tell you this, imagine you get to a point where not only you can treat others with honor and yourself with honor, but you can then begin treating ideas with honor. That means you could be drinking a cup of tea on your porch and sitting, and suddenly you see an inner event where it's as if an idea walks up to you. You know? It's all about the type of microphone we are, really. And that microphone has to do with how much you abide, how much you abide by what is there before what has to be there. To be a peaceful human being in a world where everything is conditioned to be violent is an achievement. It's advancement. That means, honestly, for me, it's like the Dalai Lama's emphasis on compassion truly made me realize there is something different here in the algorithm, you know? Technically what it is 8 billion creatures looking at a world and wanting something from it. Now, how many of these creatures want to give it first something? Imagine you were about to leave, and let's say you were a boxer, okay? And let's say you had like, or I don't know, let's say you were, I'll use a different metaphor. Let's say, I don't know, let's say somebody was in a pool drowning, and you were like a very, busy CEO, and you had like your phone and gadgets and everything on. So in that moment, you instantly take off. You give what you have before you leave to whatever the world is left to have, whatever hands you find in this world. You know? So you give in some... You give what you have, and then you jump into the water into a totally different dimension of experience. And so we can say we have 100 years to give. And the way nature is designed is that we can't take anything with us. The Pharaoh in Egypt tried. The Pharaoh in Egypt, when he was, in some sense, the process of his burial, aside from the mummification and how strange that was, but aside from that, there was as if he was put on a ship. He was put on a ship. His tomb was in a ship, as if he was sailing into another dimension in the afterlife. That's what he was trying to do. And I would say it's kind of strange, you know? We know that even ancient Egypt was made by slaves, but we still cherish the pyramids as a wonder of the world. I just noticed that, you know. That, was it a good thing or was it a bad thing? It is so hard to tell when there's so many different odds on the planet. You know, every day the tree finds itself blown by the wind. It finds its leaves arising and its leaves falling, and the seasons pass. Yet it stands its ground. Why? Because it is rooted in greater knowledge. It is rooted in the soil. That means we look at trees and, we're like, look at this, inanimate, source of oxygen on this planet. But I would say the tree, poetically, playfully, the tree is looking at the human being. It's like, buddy, I am the earth right now. What are you? You're separate from it. For me, trees are the eyes of nature. I just remembered Rabindranath Tagore has this quote about trees, which is so next level. Hold on, guys. I'm Googling Tagore tree quote. Okay, check this out. Rabindranath Tagore, this Indian polymath, he says trees are the earth's endless effort to speak to the listening heaven. Trees are the earth's endless effort to speak to the listening heaven. Trees are the voice of the earth. Because technically, if we are part of the earth and we can speak, we needed trees. Pretty much human beings owe their lives to trees. It's remarkable how many lives trees have lived and allowed to live. Okay, here's the quote, guys. I'm going to post it so people can post this in their social media. Rabindranath Tagore has another tree quote. He says, "The one who plants trees, knowing that he will never sit in their shade, has at least started to understand the meaning of life." There's a quote from this Canadian farmer named Nelson Henderson. He says, "The true meaning of life is to plant trees under whose shade you do not expect to sit." That's history for you. It's where our efforts find the eyes of the future generation, but the personal is dismissed. It's not dismissed, it's like, right now as I'm giving this talk, it's as if like there is my mind's eye, the inner realms, who I am to myself before I do anything, before the world is anything. And then there is the individual conscious ideological creature, which evokes when I speak or when I move. The moment I pretty much move as an individual, you know. When I was younger, it was only through, not only, but there was through certain moments of stillness. But I would say then I realized that phenomena, it didn't matter if it was through stillness or silence. After a point, you realize wherever you go, your mind is there. All your energy is where you are. And the most important treasure for human consciousness to hold is really, I would say, the love that is there before reason. You can say love is the backup system to reason. When your reason fails you, then what you felt was true that you went towards, in some sense, doesn't, you know. You know, sometimes I sit here generalizing, of course, a sort of inner realm perspective, but I know that every person's eyes has their own secret. And imagine there was a guru. And this guru, all these people came and like, "Guru, what should we do?" And the guru was like, "First thing is you should find a world where there is no guru, no disciple, no student, no teacher. As long as you're in that world, you haven't realized yourself yet." So imagine, it's as if like the whole point is we're looking for something beyond language. If the person has a specified linguistic approach, then it's as if you can't go, you can actually only enter the void empty-handed. If you're not empty-handed, then the void is going to push you back or scold you. Because I feel there is a collective living intelligence. This living intelligence is communicating as the moment. So the only way, if okay, here's the question. How would an attributeless collective being speak to an individual? Okay, I'm not using the term God, I'm using a collective intelligent field. You can call it God if you like, but that's the idea I'm using. So how would a field of energy speak to what is in it? Just think about that. How could your voice speak to your voice? So there is no way, there is no dualistic relationship with the higher dimensions. Either you don't touch existence and you learn from your experience, or you advance your experience by speeding up your existence. Here's a story. Didn't expect my pen to fall that far, but three Sufi friends. They find themselves at the edge of town one day, noticing that the day before there was no wall, but today there is, and there's this giant wall at the edge of town that has appeared. One of these Sufi, let's say dervishes, one of the friends notices this giant wall and notices a ladder going to the top of this giant wall. The friend goes up, the first friend's like, I'm climbing. He goes up the wall. Now, I want to, I guess, pause here and just say, keep these three friends as three phases of the purpose of truth. The two friends hold the ladder, and the first friend, he is in some sense an innovator, but he is not the prophet in some sense. He's the first to enter, you know. The first friend goes up the wall, he sees something, and he's like, oh my God. He literally sees the Garden of Paradise, and he's like, oh my God, the Garden of Paradise. He just jumps. Instantly he jumps. He sees a heavenly dimension on the other side of this wall at the edge of town, and he jumps into it. The two friends see this, and it's very odd to them, very mysterious. And now the second friend is like, all right, I'm going up. And so the third friend holds the ladder, the second friend goes up, and the second friend sees the Garden of Paradise and also sees his friend there, and he just looks at him and looks at his friend, and he's like, after seeing, like, oh my God, the Garden of Paradise. He looks at the third friend and he says, I'm going in. The Garden of Paradise is up here. So keep in mind, first friend had two people supporting the ladder. Even though he was the first, he had the easiest climb. The second friend, but the first friend jumps in, he does nothing to contribute to the past. So the first friend jumps into the future ASAP, instantly. The second friend has first a safe climb because there's a person holding it, And the second person also gives advice to the last and says the Garden of Paradise is up here, you know? And so he has the, you could say, the most blessed on earth karma. He got to go to heaven, yet he also shared the secret. Then the second friend jumps in, though. Now the third friend has to climb alone. The third friend has the most strongest character, is the most strongest soul, and let me tell you why, unfathomably. The third friend has to trust the climb, and there is no one holding, and any moment the ladder could fall. First challenge. He climbs, the third friend. He goes up. He goes up and he sees the Garden of Paradise. He sees even the two friends in this paradise. Everything in his psyche is like, go in, you found paradise, go in. And it's in that moment where I would say we find stories where evil is fighting good and evil is testifying against the source. I will tell you that's nothing compared to something of this magnitude in this story, where everything of the cultural individual programming was like, yeah, step out of the simulation. The third friend says, oh my God, the Garden of Paradise is here. The whole world should know. And he climbs down. And that is the easiest climb down the mountain ever. So you see, that's a relationship of the species with the unknown and the individual. And so if you have tried leaving here, but somehow have come back, do you know? Then there's pretty much work to do. This plane is a workstation. It's like, sure, if you are at work and you don't do your job, you suffer. Honestly, this planet's gonna become an airport, I find, in like a couple thousand years, you know? One more comment I can add to that job thing I said, guys. I have this view that when it comes to life, we have control over the velocity of living, so we can control the speed, which is our effort, and we can control the direction where the effort is going. Now, I would say if every person uses every moment for their own training, so let's say you're someone who wants to, I don't know, let's say you want to train your bicep, okay? Now, one way is you focus and you go sit somewhere and just train your bicep, train that muscle. The other approach is every time the muscle moves, if you become conscious of it, it is technically, I don't know how to say it, it's like the muscle is moving. Do you know? So it's like, okay, let me see if I can use another metaphor. That metaphor has limitations. I'm just saying, let's say you maxed out your effort and you trusted a direction and you just wanted to see what happens. Let's say you, every day, decided to write one sentence, a sentence that came from within, as a person. So you sat down every day and you just wrote one sentence, whatever. You felt something, I don't know, maybe you saw like a bird fly in the sky and you're like, a bird flew, time passed, the pen moved, whatever, like something. A sentence came, a sentence arose, right? If every day, so here's the endless effort part, here's the speed part, okay? So if every day you wrote a sentence endlessly and you didn't have time, it's like you didn't have a deadline, you were like, I'm gonna do this until I see. It's the result for me is simple, you know? And so you did this, you did this nonstop. Every day you wrote a sentence. After a point, it would become second nature. Just like when a person learns to write, at first you're thinking of how you're holding the pen, then you don't even think about the pen, you're thinking about how to write the letter. Then after you've written the letter so many times, you don't think about that, you think about writing the sentence. After you've written the sentence so many times, then you realize that's how books are made. You know, so if you can write a sentence easily, you can express your inner realms into a sentence easily, you can endlessly write. Of course, you can also observe and notice and add structure and whatnot. But I'm saying, like, if the effort was maxed out, and then the direction was constantly through feedback and training readjusted. It's like attaining mastery. You have to consider that to be a master at something, you have to see all the levels to it. You have to experience the chaos and order of it. Do you know? So technically it means you cannot attain mastery until you're even willing to see the chaotic, to confront the shadow even in a Jungian sense. So I'm saying, like, if one takes a Zen approach and they only compete with their future self, they succeed very easily. Not that they succeed, but they cultivate a skill they can hold on to. If the skill doesn't come from within, it can't be held on to. Because if you pay attention, what you create, you remember. So if for you, life was a creative process, you would remember everything, you would see everything. Not see everything, but you know what I mean. You by being engaged in the moment, being alive in the moment, you have access to the life in the cosmos. Imagine there were, like, this is hilarious, but this is like, imagine there was like this 8 billion advanced extraterrestrial beings, okay? And they looked at Earth and it was just empty. There was nothing. Maybe there was just like a chimp, you know, walking around. So imagine these 8 billion advanced extraterrestrials were like, all right, you know, imagine they were given like a sort of kind of command, go and give life to a planet or something. You know, go build an advanced civilization on a planet. So these 8 billion imagine extraterrestrial beings hovering outside of the atmosphere, Superman style. Okay, imagine they all decided to come and build an advanced civilization. Now they all entered the Earth realm, okay, and they had to enter as the Earth, through the Earth. They couldn't enter like from inside a kind of Trojan horse strategy, I would say. You know? So where it's as if the extraterrestrial has to be born on Earth and then it can realize itself as an extraterrestrial. But if it was an extraterrestrial on Earth, it is not from here. It can never understand itself here. You know? So I'm saying poetically, entertain. This is a hypothetical idea. You know? So these 8 billion, imagine, advanced aliens suddenly came to Earth and they inhabited the evolutionary cycle of a chimp. And they all emerged at a point, and slowly they woke up, remembering why they were here. And that was all of wisdom. Imagine, you know? So imagine all these 8 billion moments of intelligence, they realize that they're not here to collide. Do you see what I mean? So imagine you woke up one day and you turned on the news and it was like, for the first time ever, 8 billion human beings have changed their minds instantly on the world story. And so now there isn't only just peace, but everything is becoming skill-centered, and in some sense, efficiency is the only law we're looking for. You know? So it would be something where every day you would just see victories, success, where celebration cultures will begin. You turn on the news and you just see like this advance, that advance, this advance, and the speed of advancement. Literally, I'm pretty much saying in our inner realms we can fast forward civilization, so how can we do that in the outer realms? And it has to eventually do with what the world story is. It's like the person's like, do you believe in angels? You know? And then the person's like, I don't believe in stories. So if the idea of the angel is beyond language, sure. But then there's nothing to believe. No symbol to believe anymore. Nothing else aside from the raw nature. That means pretty much it's like Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, he said this better than maybe I could say now. He said, when I see that I'm nothing, he was a yogi, he said, when I see that I'm nothing, that is wisdom. That's another way of saying like, when you see yourself as nothing, you realize, holy shit, every person you have, let's say, had a negative emotion to or a positive emotion to, you realize everything ends. And people don't realize it. And because they don't realize it, it's so easy to have the inner realms justify attitude. But really, there is a giant emptiness. It's like if everything we call knowledge, it's written on an empty piece of paper. That empty piece of paper is there. It's like, what do we do about the emptiness behind everything we say? You can hold a sword in your hand. You can feel like a warrior. But regardless, your hand will get tired. And eventually in this life, however amount we try to deviate from our nature, we return back to it. And it's like, honestly, as a human being, I feel like on behalf of the human species, we have to apologize to all of us. In the sense that our species has to apologize to itself. As if sorry for conning you. in such a multidimensional place, we made you think you were just this little thing. I would say the great apology. That would be the great apology of Civilization 1.0. You know what it is? It's like, imagine everyday information that comes to the person is a box that goes over the person's head. And imagine some person suddenly was like, let me see if I could do a headstand. And the person did a headstand and suddenly fell, and his head, the boxes were no longer on his head. You know? Backflipping your way towards enlightenment. You know? Either we have to find meaning or we create meaning, or there's no meaning. If we see there's no meaning, it doesn't give us a cool story, we feel life could be empty too soon, doesn't really make sense. You know, if it's like complete fullness, like you could think like right now there is no truth, and you could also think that everything is truth right now. The mind can instantly, literally, like how in Matrix, there was a scene where the whole, like I don't know, he wanted to know, I don't know, Kung Fu. Suddenly they went into this Kung Fu studio, then he wanted to know about guns, suddenly guns appeared or whatever, right? So did you see how instant in that movie scene, like, the world changed? I would say in the inner realms it's like that too. I feel there's two types of work. You are working for yourself, and you're working for the world. Now, if you only work for yourself, you win. If you work for the world, because you're a part of it, everybody wins. So if the blade of intellect was held with a collective intent rather than individual pride breaking, you know, the potentials of the future to see. There was a character in this show where this character was a gentle human being, and then this berserk, kinda insane, kinda in a battlefield human being who had like gone crazy. You know, and it's attacking this person, and in the middle, this person just holds the head of that person, you know? And it's as if it was for the first time, you could say, a battle of gentleness with chaotic intensity. Gentleness has a power when it comes to that. I would say the power of gentleness is that it rather than doing something to the other, brings the other into gentleness. You know, it's like we're like a known animal plus unknown mind. You know? And so really it's like we have to tame the animal within. And this may be strange, but imagine you exerted the same discipline if you were a pet owner, how you would speak to the pet. You began speaking to yourself, imagine that way, you know? Honestly, I feel sometimes I am a follower of my mind. It's like that's where the content comes from. It's like on some level, it's just like waiting. And then the content comes. honestly, like, what can we say about an unknown mind? That's why I'm saying the whole thing is that when we get to the unknown, that's the ultimate simplicity. An object can be looked at from different angles. Subjects can be looked at different angles. Only the sphere that is the presence of an attention doesn't have an angle. The only thing I find that is the common denominator, and you can say the access to the collective unconscious, is unknown presence of attention. You know, there are warriors who okay, I'll tell you a perfect example. There's this Japanese comic made into a show called Vinland Saga. And it's pretty much like a Japanese creative interpretation of the Vikings. But I would say in it, there was a scene where there's this great warrior, the strongest warrior in the whole narrative, and his name is Thors, and he's caught in like this strange canyon on a boat, like river in a canyon or something. And so a group of thieves attack him. And now what has happened is he's there with a bunch of soldiers, you know, well, with a bunch of people from his like village or something, and he's a great warrior. Like he's a legendary warrior with a title even in the land. And so what happens is Thor's excuse me, let me see. So pretty much some guy has been paid to assassinate this main character in this Japanese show Vinland Saga, Thors. Now there comes this situation where Thors has to defend his boat where his son has sneaked into from these thieves. You know? From these thieves that are like trying to kill him, right? Now there's like 30 thieves, there's this one great warrior named Thors, right? And so what happens is they go into combat, and this Thors guy, instead of letting the others jump on his boat, he jumps on the enemy's boat. You know, and he's this legendary great warrior in the story. So what happens is he begins hitting, and in some sense, literally one punching everybody. You know? He starts hitting everybody and kind of like defeats, let's say he just hits people, okay? And then he comes to the main character, the main bad guy, and he fights with the main bad guy, and he even defeats the main bad guy, and they had this bet, they had this wager, right? And the last second where the bad guy has to honor the bet, right? The bad guy raises his hand, and he had an ambush of archers the whole time. And so these archers shoot this great warrior, and through deception he wins, the bad guy. Now the scene, what happens is like the child of that great warrior, Thors, sees this, and like the story continues of what happens to that child. But now the whole point is, at the end of it, they all go back, and the bad guy's in the boat, and they're all sailing, and the whole event has changed. And then at the end of that whole incident, the second hand of the bad guy comes and gives a report, and he says, none of our soldiers were killed. None of our soldiers were killed. And he's shocked that this great warrior that could instantly kill all of them, do you know? He had only just like hit them. He hadn't taken their life. And so he's so shocked. The bad guy who's deceived, he suddenly sees this, and it's as if like he's seeing the soul of a true warrior. You know? that he had lived this life without, like in that scene, at least hurting anybody. The intellect is a sword that is required only when human emotional decency, I would say, can't continue. You know, a lot of things, it's like every person is temporary, you know? When we realize everyone is temporary, it's as if it doesn't really matter what they're seeing, you know, because it all ends. But at the same time, it's also the rare opportunity that all these thoughts that come and go throughout the day that the person I could identify with or notice or whatever, it's like, what is done with them? Somebody asked me once, where do you get your content? I was like, from the world, man. It's like all this content is in front of us. You know, some people discriminate between awareness and consciousness. Consciousness requires a form. You're conscious of something or through something. But awareness is unconditional. It is how the here and now was so here and now before we had the words here and now. There is this thing that anything the person considers to be special isolates from anything. If I think, like, I'll give you an example. I have, let's say, flown over the architecture of various thought forms throughout the years that I've been giving these talks, but I have chosen one thought to be more superior than the others, for example. You know, so there is something that it's like, if the sword is in your hand, if the intellect is here, then most likely it requires to be used. It's like the most basic question, like, why is all of this here? To do something with the problem, you know? I would say one can cultivate this as a practice where they notice how how thought turns to action, how inner realm becomes outer realm. PLX0 says, do you think higher dimensional entities monitor our thoughts and internal feelings? That would be an incredible waste of time for them. When you're in a higher, playing a higher game, you want to play an even more higher game. you know. I don't know, if they have spare time, maybe. I mean, depends if they even have time, you know. No, it was coming from my live stream, guys. I have a window. I'm speaking beside a window. That screech was coming from my side. You might wonder if I live beside a NASCAR track. You know, I don't, but it feels like it. You know. Here's the thing. I'll be honest, PLX0. I'll tell you this. I see it in this way where. For me, higher dimension can't exist without a lower. So it could be that the higher and lower are like interconnect. Here's the thing. I'm saying, if it's you, then it's still here. So the only way it could be higher dimensional if it's not this, because this is defining this dimension. Do you know what we are? So the point is, it's not that there is a truth that we can never know. It's just that you can't know truth in this room, in this plane of existence. It's as if like this plane of existence is one room of a cosmic mansion. I've used this metaphor before. So it's as if from one room of a mansion, it's as if we don't realize there's a giant hall outside of this mansion. So let us say you have been through 70 battlefields, and you have been undefeated. "70 battles, undefeated." Okay, let's continue from this point that you have been in 70 battles and undefeated, and you feel like the greatest warrior. Even the king of the land is afraid of you. You know, and so this warrior You look at the weight of your sword in your hand. You wonder, all those people you have defeated, where have they gone? And for the first time, the most egotistical warrior, let us say. I'm going to shift it to just the story at this point. People can entertain it in a first-person point of view if they like. The great warrior wonders about heaven and hell, wonders about where life goes after it is no longer here. He eventually finds a sage. The sage is at the top of the mountains. The imperial warrior, this warrior, great warrior, walks into this sage's, like, I don't know, temple. Sage is drinking tea. Disturbs the tea and says, "Sage, tell me, what is heaven and hell?" The sage looks at him and says, "You're too much of an animal. You're too much of a goon to understand this, you know?" And it's in that moment where the imperial, you can say, warrior gets so angry. How dare? It's like, I've been undefeated in 70 battles. How dare this guy say this? He gets angry as he has been dishonored, or even someone has dared to dishonor him, and he's about to like kill the sage with his sword or whatever. And the sage looks at him and says, "This is the doors to hell." And something, as if something the sage said hit the imperial warrior before the sword could hit the thing, you know? And so the imperial warrior, his hands just hovering, and he can't kill the sage. And he realized hell is an attitude. It's your approach to the moment. He drops the sword, he bows. The sage says, "This is the doors to heaven," pretty much. And then he invites this imperial warrior who has been living this inhuman greatness back into, the grace of the world. So it's your state of mind. Your mind is the captain of the ship. If you are not. If the person anything the person doesn't care for, it leaves their moment. You know, whether it's people, whether it's stuff, anything your attention doesn't care for its existence. It's not. It's like, even we can say it leaves you because you leave it. You know. So, anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I'm gonna end the talk here. Pretty much, if you can find a simpler, emotionally stable way to um, treat the moment, it is way better than bringing the intellectual precision and sharpness. Do you know of it? That means it's as if, like, I would say, because human beings, they are simulating the world for themselves, right? And there's a stability required where if that stability shakes, you know, then the human being has to restart their whole identification. Now, that restart could be enlightening, but it would also dismiss everything they have cultivated so far, you know? So, think we should treat it as if people are masking their lives in language. If they take the mask as their face, they suffer. If you think a mask is in your face and you buy, like, let's say, the most expensive, like, face lotion or something, you know, and you put all that face lotion on the mask. Oh man, that's so nice. You know? A person who thinks a mask is their face and then they're washing the mask as if they think they're washing their face. You know? Anyways, guys, yeah, pretty much be attentive to the emotions of the environment. Wonder how people are being subjects to themselves, and you can totally, so after a while, from just looking at people's eyes, notice. You can instantly know how intensely they're being a subject to themselves or not. I'm telling you, it's just the way the eyes are held. Do you know? The more intense your eyes are held, it's as if you've grabbed something. Do you know? The more intense the person's eyes are. Do you know? That means there's a firmness, and might comes from that uncertainty in the unknown before the unknown to itself. So, anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. I will be on the Discord server for a little bit for those interested. Much blessings and namaste.